Hey yogis, this is a recap of week 5 of 81 Facets of the Mind. So we're halfway through the course tonight, and we've been through the negative, positive, and neutral mind. We talked about that in week 1. And in weeks 2, 3, and 4, we went through the 3 aspects of the negative mind. That was the defender, the manager, and the preserver. And tonight we're moving into the positive mind. So just looking at a general difference between aspects that start with the negative mind versus aspects that start with the positive mind. An aspect that starts with the negative mind is generally reacting to the environment around them, responding. It's a lot about survival. When we move into the positive mind, we're looking at creating based on the environment around us. So the first aspect that we look at tonight for the positive mind is the artist. This is positive mind times manas. Manas is a sensory mind. So positive mind is representing the urge to create. And manas with the senses is actually looking at creating on the level of pleasure. And that's why we have the aspect of the artist. The 3 projections of the artist are, number 1 is the actor, number 2 is the doer, and number 3 is the originator. So let's look first at what makes the artist the artist. So in the book it says this aspect gives you extraordinary sensitivity to sensation, emotion, and impressions from nature and other people. Its basic urge is to create, elaborate, and express each sensation. When the artist is too strong, they're bewitched by special people, places, and things. They see a richness that pulls them towards sensation. They take risks, flirt with addiction, and find only positive impacts in tragedy, intense experiences, and change. When the artist is too weak, there's a lack of spontaneous joy from all that happens, and there's a retreat to internal imagination in order to feel good. When it's balanced, the artist explores every feeling by creating something to experience, amplify, or repeat. It is concerned with proportions, blends, and how to utilize what it senses. It's open to all opinions and loves diversity. Curiosity, wonder, and impatience are frequent moods for this aspect. Life becomes a work of art or an idiosyncratic piece of work. Moderation and dedication are essential. So when we go into the first projection, the actor, the phrase for the actor is the art of memorizing creativity. So this is positive mind times manas with the negative mind. So this is still creation because it starts with the positive mind, but the aspect of the negative mind that comes forward is the use of memory. And that use of memory is memorization of the past. The actor relies on repetitive experiences in order to feel good. When the actor is too strong, there's an idolization of heroes, leaders, and teachers. And if you think about within a work situation, someone that idolizes their boss may be in some ways not necessarily a pushover, but they're doing everything in order to gain recognition, and they're trying to emulate the qualities of their boss, and they get totally wrapped up in that identity. So if they aren't able to fulfill the identity within work that they're trying to fulfill, then they may not have very high self-worth. When the actor's too weak, what happens is that they actually become afraid of expressing and experiencing their own sensations and emotions. So they become very reserved people and held back. And their reservation also stems from them being critical of themselves and critical of other people they question why people want to experience pleasure in creation because they've cut it off for themselves. And when the actor is balanced, think about somebody working within a company and being able to represent that company with enthusiasm and feel passionate about what it is that they're telling other people about it, and at the same time knowing that this is just a role within their life, and at the end of the day they can step out of that role and into a different role. So there is a degree of detachment and yet passion at the same time for the work that they're doing. The meditation for the actor is called Karani Kriya. And when we do it, the hands are going to come in front of the throat with the first two fingers touching. We bring the elbows parallel to the ground. I see mine are kind of high. Okay. And we close the eyes to 1/10 open. Inhale for 2 seconds. Hold the breath for 5 seconds. Exhale for 10 to 15 seconds. So I'm actually going to demonstrate by counting out loud. So I'll inhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can do that for as long as you feel comfortable, anywhere for 11 to 31 minutes, or just a couple minutes, depending on what it is that you want. So Yogi Bhajan says this Kriya will help the aspirant find the source of creativity that is in the heart. It solves the problem of finding how to make a lucrative livelihood and satisfy the soul at the same time. Projection number 11 is the doer, and this projection is exactly how it sounds. Anyone you know that does a lot of things tends to be pretty upbeat and positive, have high expectations, they're very goal-oriented. The doer finds a lot of pleasure simply in doing and completion. So they may be on to the next project because they love that feeling of accomplishment, and they may love the feeling of accomplishment and doing even more so than they are attached to the project itself. You can imagine that when the doer is too strong, they really become a workaholic, and their sense of self-worth is measured through attainment. And because they work so much, they may tilt from one extreme to the other, which means they may be prone to addiction in the times that they're not working. When the doer is too weak, they either don't have the concentration to be able to complete their projects, or they don't have the know-how of how to complete their projects. They may not be confident to know what their next steps are. And when the doer's balanced, they have an instinctive organization capacity. They understand attention to detail, and they know what the sequence of events that needs to happen, or the sequence of activities that need to happen in order to guide something to completion. The meditation for the doer it requires strength within the arms. I'm gonna turn sideways, so this is a little. My arms aren't in your face. The hands come out like that in front, and you flex the palms open at 90 degrees or however much you can, and bring the hands to the level of the heart. Then with your gaze, you'll look down at the tip of the nose, and we'll chant Satnam, 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 Waheguru. And that's a meditation. You rhythmically chant Satnam, 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 Waheguru. Satnam, 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 Waheguru. And you'll notice after a couple of minutes that your arms will get tired. So Yogi Bhajan says about this meditation that it develops willpower and gives the capacity to understand the elements of your personality. It's perfect to overcome difficulty in completing projects and doing what you intend. So this meditation is meant to help build your willpower to help you follow through with the things that you start. Okay, so the final projection for the artist is the originator. And I should say that the phrase for the doer is the art of creating art. This is positive mind times manas times positive mind. So that addition of the positive mind is just that drive for creation, production itself. Now, the originator is the art of creating creativity. So while the doer creates things, the originator creates things that are new, original, have their special signature on it. This is positive mind times manas times the neutral mind. So Yogi Bhajan says about this projection, besides the enthusiasm to create something from what is sensed, this projection goes beyond the surface. The result is not just art, but art that has originality. It is creativity infused with an inner cohesion that comes from a vision of the uniqueness that exists in this moment of time and in these particular sensations. So when the originator is too strong, there's this desire to derive meaning from everything around them. And maybe there's even like a lack of taking responsibility for the fact that not everything has a meaning inherent within itself that makes sense for us. Rather, we have the power and the privilege to assign meaning to the things around us. And so these people may be looking a little too much outside of themselves for meaning. When the originator projection is too weak, they settle for average. So that means that maybe someone is decent at writing, they're decent at school, they do just enough to get by, to make good grades, but not excellent grades. And they think that just because they made an A on their paper for English, that they've done enough and that's all that life requires of them. And when the originator is balanced, not only do they develop the capacity to write well, to paint well, to do whatever their sport is or whatever it is that they're passionate about, they first go through the process of imitating and gaining a certain proficiency. And then at the point that they've gained proficiency in whatever it is that their skill is, then there's a guiding style or signature or aesthetic that develops just from them being themselves and interacting with whatever this thing is. So it says that they elevate passion to purpose and fancy to enchantment. So the balanced originator finds something they're passionate about, and then they add themselves into it, and that becomes part of their life purpose. The meditation for this is right hand resting on the left hand, and it's going to be right above the solar plexus and right below the heart there. The thumbs are going to extend out straight forward, so they're not resting, they're extending straight out like that. And then from there, the eyes are 1/10 open. You're looking down the nose with your eyes 1/10 open. You take a long, deep breath, and in one breath you chant, Hadi, 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 Had. And you can chant in a monotone. The last sound, har, is extended out, and there's a visualization of projecting the sound out to infinity. Yogi Bhajan suggests imagining a spring green color expanding from every pore of the body to the cosmos with this last sound. So when I've been practicing that last sound, I say it pretty softly because I imagine the expansion of har out to infinity to be a very subtle thing. And so I say it softly, and then I picture the green color expanding from my pores. So I'll demonstrate a few more times. Hadi, 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 Hadi. Hadi, 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 Hadi. Hadi, 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 Hadi. And that's the meditation for the originator. Okay. So those are the three meditations for the three projections. And let me just take a moment to go over the meditation for the actual aspect of the artist. The hands are going to come out in front of the heart center, and you'll actually have just the outsides of your ring fingers touch, and your pinky fingers will overlap each other with the right finger on top of the left finger. The eyes look down towards the finger, and you'll internally chant Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. And you're mentally pulsing, so you're just visualizing internally that your thumb touches one finger, then the next, then the next, then the last as you're chanting. But you're only visualizing it. You're not actually touching with your finger. So you'll internally chant sa, ta, na, ma. Pulsing your thumb in your mind's eye from finger to finger. And you do this in a very slow breath. So the suggestion is that you take 4 breaths or less in a minute, which means that each breath needs to be 15 seconds long, which means that your inhale needs to be 7.5 seconds and your exhale needs to be 7.5 seconds, which also means that if you chant sa, ta, na, ma on the inhalation, each syllable will take about 2 seconds to chant. So the pace would go something like this. Sa, ta, na, ma. And you'd be saying that internally the whole time. So you could do this for up to 31 minutes. You could also just do it for a couple of minutes. This is a meditation for all 3 projections. After we went over these aspects and projections, we had read Win the Game of Life, chapter 2 within the book. And there's really just one prime principle that I want to look at within the book or within this chapter. And this is Yogi Bhajan talking about if we could speak directly to each other instead of to our projections. And sometimes he says, like, I don't want to speak to your mind, I want to speak to you. And he says that communication is difficult because we are speaking to each other's projections. My projections are speaking to your projections instead of saying the truth. And he's saying that it would be much better if we had a directed dialogue with each other. So one of the examples he gives in the book is someone saying, here's 2 different ways to say it. Someone could say, I do not want to listen to you. This is the direct way to speak. Or they could kind of inch around it and say, I don't understand what you're saying. I can't listen very well. He says that the latter is a lie. And this is a way, he says the mind is unable to make a clear decision and communicate it. So then instead of saying the truth, the person covers up the truth and says they don't understand. But he says we all have the capacity to understand. And so he says, if you instead of saying I don't understand and I can't listen very well, say I don't like to listen to you, then immediately the question comes back, why not? And then a direct dialogue can happen. The mind can deal direct with the fact instead of with the projections and twists from it. And I find this really interesting because imagine how often are we speaking directly to the fact of what is versus speaking to people's projections and talking around the truth of what's really going on for them. He says, if you don't deal with the direct reality and instead you deal only with projections and reactions, then you're not really dealing with it as a person. He says that if we don't speak the truth, then we're not really being a person. We're just trying to protect our professional status. So I think it's really good food for thought. He gives a similar example of I don't want to listen to you. And so, or he says, say this is happening with his class and somebody says, I don't want to listen to you. And then he says, why not? And he's kind of role playing and he says, well, maybe the reason somebody says, I don't want to listen is because I don't want to hear. And then he says, why not? And he says, because if I hear you, then I have to carry you. It means that I have to hold your pain inside of me if I actually allow myself to absorb in what it is you're telling me, and I don't want to do that. Anyways, it's really good stuff to think about. So that's it for week 5. For homework, next week we're going to read chapter 7. It's page 71 through 78, and it is called Speak with Committed Language. And we're going to practice the meditations for the artist, and that's what we'll do this week. And for your homework, you can journal about your relationship with this aspect of the artist and the different projections and see which ones are strong and which ones are weak. And then next week we'll get into the next aspect, which is the producer. So I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye.